Welcome. Welcome to the Train Smart podcast with Bellex Training Group. Today, I've got Jamey Caldwell on.
What's
Jamey,
up?
I appreciate you coming on, taking the time out of your day. And I've got a bunch of super cool questions for you. But first, can you tell everyone who you are and what you do?
Yeah, sure can, Nick. And dude, thanks for having me on. I appreciate it. Known you for a little while and bump into you in town. And yeah, man, when you called me to come on, I was excited. Definitely enjoy it.
Yeah.
So who I am and what I do now. So man, I'm nobody special. Grew up in New England. Currently now living in North Carolina. Spent normal childhood growing up. My dad was a cop, and that kind of got me interested in, and my whole family. My grandfather was, and then my other grandfather was in the old Army Air Corps before it was the Air Force. But I just kind of always had an interest in the military. I joined the military right out of high school. Came in with a Ranger contract. I was fortunate enough that my brother-in-law was a Ranger back in like the mid 80s. And he sort of set me on, the path. Was like, hey, I know I wanted to join the military. I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I wanted to do something more than just being an infantry guy or, whatever, being a grunt. So he kind of schooled me on the whole Ranger thing and that process of how that works and where else you can go from there, how it sort of opens up a lot of doors. So I joined the military with a Ranger contract, got to 1st Ranger Battalion after all my initial training and, Ranger selection, and spent about 7 years in Savannah, Georgia, which was awesome. Loved it, but I wanted to do more. So I tried out for another organization up here at Fort Bragg, made it, got up here in 2000. Got after, our OTC, all of our training stuff, then finally got assigned to my team in June of 01, and 9/11 kicked off, and then that was it, man. It was balls to the wall, deploying left and right. And I mean, that's what I wanted to do. And I did just over 14 years here with the unit, and retired in December of 14. And pretty much I wanted to do something completely different, and I've always had a passion for fishing. So I had started competitively fishing when I lived in Savannah, continued with that, started to grow that, saw that guys were making a living at it, and just figured, hey, this could be my retirement plan after 20 years in the military. So I got sponsors and started fishing competitively and sort of getting better and better and building my way up through the tours, and then turned pro while I was still on active duty. So I was fishing at a professional level my last couple of years active, and then pretty much walked right into that. So after I got out, I fished bass and saltwater professionally for a couple of years. Still fish bass professionally, but I've always worked with and consulted with some companies on the tactical side, and that sort of drew me back into this space and started up my own tactical training company, 1 Minute Out, and was doing the normal rifle, pistol, and tactical stuff. But, more and more guys started doing that. And I really have a background in kind of like night vision and that world. My last few years when I was at the unit, I worked in our research and development section. And that was my specialty, was VAS, visual augmentation systems. So night vision, lasers, weapon sights, and scopes. And that's where I got to meet all these different vendors and really do a deep dive on night vision and thermal and weapon scopes and different things. And that still piqued my interest, and I still had all these relationships. So I sort of molded my training company into just night vision training. So now I travel the country, train a lot of like SWAT teams, law enforcement, government agencies on night vision use, tactics, zeroing, CQB, and it's been fun. I enjoy it. That's what I'm currently doing, and still fishing, and then trying to manage everything else in life that we get thrown at us. But that's sort of me and where I'm at.
Interesting. So, man, if you asked me when I was like a teenager what I was going to do for a living, I would have told you I would, be a professional fisherman at some point. Like at the time I was doing that. Like
Yeah.
I was fishing tournaments almost every weekend when I was a teenager. So, but
Yeah,
the
it's
reason why I
fun.
wanted to have you on is because I know that, how interested you are in NVGs and what you teach with NVGs and that sort of thing. And so This would kind of be sort of a gear heavy type of podcast, but if someone was, say, just getting into night vision, right? This is a very broad question. If they're just getting into night vision, what would be a good place to start, right? At least in terms of tubes themselves. Do they get a monocular? Are they looking for duals? Are they looking for white phos, the brands, all of that jazz? Like, what is a good place to start for somebody?
Yeah. Max, welcome. That's how you dialed in. Nice to meet you,
thanks.
dude.
Yeah, and Nick couldn't wait for me to go take a dump. So here I am.
Yeah, there you go, man. You should have been quicker.
Lesson learned.
Yeah. So it's weird, man. They're really, I hate to say this, the starting point depends on your budget. I wouldn't tell guys like, hey, if you're just getting into this immediately, go grab a PVS 14, like a single tube and run around, because anybody that's done that, it kind of sucks, especially if you've ever used dual tubes. You have no depth perception. You only have one eye using, night vision. We've got two eyes. We want both eyes to be able to see in the dark and see everything that we can. But if your budget doesn't allow for that, $8,000 to $10,000 spend right out the gate to get a good set of dual tubes, then, well, you got to start with a monocular. And there's nothing wrong with it. You'll still learn a lot. You'll be able to see in the dark and a lot of things that you can, get accomplished. As far as, what you're looking for in night vision, whether it is a single or whether it's dual tubes, there's really three things that I try to hit home to everybody, whether that's civilian use, whether it's military use, or whether it's, law enforcement. And I train a lot of law enforcement. And when you talk to these guys on the SWAT teams, if they're finally going to get into this night vision program and or upgrade their night vision, if they've got something old and existing, this money doesn't come around often. And even on the civilian side, like if you're going to drop 10 grand on a set of night vision, you're going to have it for a while. A lot of us are not afforded the ability to just, oh, hey, what's the latest and greatest set of nods and tubes out? Okay, I'm getting new sets of nods this year, another 10 grand here or there. So three things. Number one is your tube. Like, all your money goes into that night vision tube. Don't worry about the housing. Don't worry about the bells and whistles and what it does. All your money is spent on that tube. That's what you can or can't see at night with. Like, you need the best tube that you can afford. So L3 and Elbit are the two U.S. tube manufacturers. They're the only ones in the United States that make tubes. They make the best tubes in the world. L3, probably a little bit of an edge over Elbit as far as the manufacturing of the tubes go, just with the FOM rating. And L3 is a filmless tube versus Elbit is still a thin film tube. Most people are not going to be able to see or tell the difference between the two. FOM L3 is consistently putting out 2500 and better. I mean, I've even heard they're now consistently like almost 2800 FOM. Elbit is a little bit behind in that, but they've got some new processes going on right now in their factory, the tube making that's going to be ramped up and bring them online with L3 very shortly. So first again is your tube. Get the best you can. I would say L3 or Elbit. Next in that market is Photonis. So Photonis is making a very big push. They're a tube manufacturer in France. They're making a big push in the U.S. They're not a Gen 3 tube. They're still a Gen 2 tube, and it has to do with the photocathode, something inside the tube, right? They're very good at their marketing. I'll give them that. They market, if you look at their website, oh, we provide the majority of the the world's special operations forces with tubes. Nobody in the U.S. Nobody at all in the U.S. is using Photonis. The government is not buying Photonis. They're buying Elbit and they're buying L3. Majority of L3. But to me, where they lack is to compete, they're overdriving their tube. I see guys, a lot of Photonis tubes with burns in them. If you get them near any type of bright light source or laser, I've seen them shutter in the tube, actually visually, like auto gating, turning on and off itself to protect itself. But the image is good. Like if it's going to come down to a price point again, where if you're like, hey, I could get into a set of duals versus a monocular with Photonis tubes, and you're buying their new 4G, like a high FOM tube, test them out, check them, make sure you have a very good warranty on those tubes, but there's nothing wrong with going that route. I mean, it's a budget thing.
Are those the ones that we typically see that are like maybe 5-6 grand for a set of duals?
Some of them, yes. Some of
Okay.
what we're starting to see, and we can talk about this, is this Chinese market. Like
Ah,
China's made a big push now in the night vision world. That's all. We'll get into that. I won't even go down that rabbit hole right now because that is a whole nother topic. Um,
where'd they get that technology from?
Photonus. Yeah.
Yeah.
Photonus sold them the tower, sold them everything for them to make it. Yeah, which is
Sweet.
bullshit. Because all they're doing, again, we'll get into it in a minute, but they're basically just providing that to their military.
Yeah.
That's what they're doing. Okay, so tube, right? Spend all your money on that tube.
Yep.
The housing, there's little things that I like to have on the housing that I tell guys to look for. Number one is an adjustable diopter. You want the ability to adjust the diopter. So I happen to have a set of mine here. So these are 1531s, right? You notice this is the objective side. So if I drop my nods, right, when they're on my head, get them to where you can see here. So this is your objective lens. This is your focus. They all have that. On this side, you have your diopter adjust if you have that. PVS 31s do not have this. They don't have an adjustable one. They have a lens that screws in. That's your diopter. They send them all with a negative 0.5 diopter. If that's not your correction, $360 later, you could buy another set of diopters to screw in there. But once your vision changes again, as you can see, I'm wearing these beautiful readers so I can see you and see detail right now as I get older. So your eyes change. So again, you're dropping a lot of money on a set of these. You don't want to now every year or more have to spend another $350 to get new screw-in diopters just to save you a tiny bit of weight by going with 31s. 1531 is an identical goggle to the 31, except it has an adjustable diopter. It also has an IR light on it, but I don't really care for that. It's the working light. It's not a factor for me, and I don't think it should be a factor for anybody. We have all kinds of different lights on our helmets that you can create IR and do whatever light you need. But again, number one is tube. Number two is get this adjustable diopter. And then just as important as the adjustable diopter is having a manual gain. You've got to be able to adjust the gain and the brightness level of your tube because you want to use all your 200-degree field of view. You know, when we throw duals or singles on, we go from the human eye has 200-degree field of view. That's what we can see. Our peripheral, you know, when we're looking forward, I can see about 200 degrees. When you throw night vision on, we're down to about 40-degree field of view. Well, I still want to use the rest of my unaided vision, my peripheral. I can still look around my night vision and be able to see what's going on or see below when I'm doing mag changes, working off my kit, and or working in various spaces where I don't want to bump into things. So we don't run eye cups at all, get rid of them, and then we want to have that adjustable gain so we could dim the tube brightness down enough that we can open up this vision. And in my classes, I always do a little demo with everybody. You know, first thing at night when we get our nods on is get them out there and I have them crank their gain all the way up, make it as bright as possible. And then you just put your hands like right here next to your face. You're looking straight through your tubes. You put your hands up here and I'm like, hey, can you even see your fingers? Like how many fingers are you holding up by looking straight? And with the tubes very bright, you can't see it. You can't even see your hands out here at all. I'm like, you have no peripheral vision at all. I'm like, okay, now dim them down as low as they'll go. Some nods will turn off, but you could dim them as low as they'll go where you could still see. It's too dim. You wouldn't operate that way. But then all of a sudden your eyes start to adjust to the dark. Your hands are out here and you're like, holy crap, 1, 2, 3. Like I can see all my fingers. I can see everything around here. You're like, okay, let's find that happy medium. Let's bring the gain back up to a level where, yep, hey, I can see what I need to see. Yeah, it's not super bright and I can, you know, see more and tons of detail. I don't need that because I have IR light source on my gun, whatever it might be to help illuminate various areas. But I need to be able to use this peripheral so I still have 200-degree field of view. I have 40-ish that's enhanced that I can see, you know, in the dark with night vision anywhere that I look, but I can still see my peripheral. And really the big thing for that hits home, again, as we're moving around things, when you start to approach something, you have your nods on and I'm moving forward. Like we just take for granted, let's just say you're in a shoot house and you're moving through the shoot house and you go through a threshold and you're clearing and you're doing everything. You're seeing so much through your peripheral. Your eyes are focused in that threshold, right? Taking your snapshot. And as you go to enter in through the threshold, you can see the edges of the doors and you don't run into it and bump into it or hit your shoulder as you're trying to take a shot. You see it.
Makes
When
sense.
you're under nods, now you have 40-degree field of view. Once you're 2 steps even in the hallway away from that doorway, you cannot see the edge of the door anymore at all with your nods. And your focus needs to be down that hallway or through that threshold or wherever it is that you're going forward, not going, oh, let me quickly glance left and right to see that doorway. You now pick it up with your peripheral around your night vision, and you can still move very fast and fluid through confined spaces, whatever it might be. Because again, we're under nods. We're trying to be sneaky, stealthy. We don't want to bump and bounce off of shit. So with that, again, a new guy getting nods, whatever you can afford, I highly recommend some type of a dual tube versus a single. But if single is what you can afford, $3-4 grand versus $8 to $10+ grand, hey, that's what you got. All your money is in your tube. Get the best tube that you can buy, and then look at the housing. I always want an adjustable diopter, and you want that manual gain. There are some housings out there, they're older, that don't have manual gain. A PVS 15 doesn't have it. Some of your Anvis goggles don't have it. Even panos. So the new panos have it. The fused pano finally has an adjustable gain because you have thermal in there. You've got to be able to adjust the thermal. But the panos, I don't run them. I never did. I don't care for them because, yeah, you get almost 100-degree field of view. It's still not 200, but now you totally lost everything else. It's so hard because that aperture is so big on your eye. You can't see around them. You can't adjust the gain to dim them down enough to even be able to really look under and see things around them. They just take up way too much space on your actual eyes that I'm not a fan. I don't run them, don't care for them. The new one is money. That's another topic. But so that's what I would say. Very long answer to that. But
no, that was great.
Yeah, it's important. I mean, you can't just, oh man, my buddy's, selling some nods, I'm just going to grab them and go. I mean, you can do that, but you got to understand what you're buying.
The adjustable gain is something that I didn't really even think about. I mean, I had a 14. I started with a 14 that had adjustable gain. I guess I kind of took it for granted, and then I ended up with 15s, and the tubes are great. And I was like, cool, dual tubes, and I still like them. But not having the adjustable gain it does kind of suck.
It does. And I fell in the same exact thing. When I was in Ranger Battalion, I'm going to date myself here, but when I was in Ranger Battalion, we got issued PVS 7 Bravos, right? Which is it's a binocular, like
the one with the tube in the middle, right?
It's got it was a cheap way to give you night vision in both eyes. It has a single tube in the middle, and then through mirrors, they split it to both eyes. Well, then we went to the 7 Delta, which was just an advancement of that model. And then we got PVS 14s, which allowed you to adjust the gain, was one eye, and immediately everybody's like, oh, this is awesome. And you crank the gain way up. You're like, I can see so much more. But this eye, your unaided eye, whatever that is, you can't see anything. Like, you totally blind that other eye out completely. But that's what everybody did because they just, oh, this is a volume knob. Well, I want it cranked the hell up. That's the way I listen to my hard rock. That's the way I'm going to run my night vision. Just pound it up. And you just lose your vision. That device was meant for movement patrolling, and you dim it way down so that your other eye, your unaided eye, can then adjust to the dark, and you can still see with your unaided eye, just as if you were, moving at night in the dark. And I didn't figure that out till we were in Panama, and we were doing this like jungle, this big jungle training event when I was at 175. We're in Panama, and it's pitch dark in the, triple canopy, all this. And I started playing with that knob because I'm like, man, I really need to be able to see more than I can just see with one eye. And it started dimming it down. And I'm like, whoa, holy cow, like I can still see what I need to in this other spectrum of light. And now my other eye can see again. I'm like, this is cool. Like, this is how it's supposed to be, but nobody tells you that. Like you still today, guys get handed this bag of night vision and they're like, here you go. We're going to go on an op tonight. And there is no training to go with it. It's crazy.
Yeah. I noticed back when I used to run in PVS 14 is my eyes would almost like fight to be dominant. And I don't know if that's just a my eye thing, or I probably had it set up incorrectly, to be honest. But it was weird. It was like my eyes would fight to be dominant, and then like sometimes I would see out of the one eye, and sometimes I would see out of the tube. It was really weird. I really didn't care for them at all.
Yep. So what your eye is doing 1,000 times a second, your eye is trying to correct the image. And this goes to anything, whether it's, night vision, you have a 14 on, if that gain is too high, your other eye is trying to merge those two images that it sees and make it one. That's why some people will have a contact. Like if you have both issues with near and far vision, doctors are now giving people contacts where one is near and one is far. And your eyes will adjust and merge the images to create one. It's not like you just kind of walk around with one eye, looking at everything. Well, let me just close this eye. Okay, now I can read that sign down the road, or let me close this eye. Now I can read this newspaper. Your eyes adjust to it, but it's very hard when you're talking about light and when you're shining more light into one eye versus the other.
I see. I noticed you had a thermal on your goggle. Is that something that you would recommend? So I don't have a thermal, but my neighbor has a set of Fusion goggles, and him and I go rabbit hunting at night. I don't know if that's legal or not. Maybe I shouldn't say that. Anyway, whatever. Dude, it's the cheat code. Like he sees everything, and I'm like, Steve, where's it at? And he just like points over there, and I'm like, okay, I see it. And then we all get to shoot the rabbits or whatever. But is that something that you would recommend? And like what type of context would it be beneficial to have thermals?
So I am a huge fan and proponent of thermal. I do not like my night vision to not have it. And a couple of reasons. One is, it saved my life in combat. I'm here talking to you right now because thermal saved my life. There was not to get into a big long war story, but a dude was 15 feet away from me. I was up on a wall, overwatching this, this compound, and the grass was way overgrown inside of it. I'm looking, I didn't see anything when we first got up there. I'm like, okay, we got nothing. And one of the other teams was in contact, and I wanted to get in the fight. I'm like, hey, I got nothing. Where do you need me? Like, I hear gunfire. Where do you need me? I'm coming, and then as I'm, put on hold for them to sort of figure it out and where they needed me, I look in the grass, and the thermal in my night vision, I'm like, what is that? And I come up with my illuminator, and this dude comes out of the grass with his AK dead on me. He had me dead. If he would have just shot from the grass, I would not be here. It was that close, and he was pointing directly at me. He decided, thankfully, to stand up in the grass before he took his shot. And I'm like, hey, you're a person, not a good one. But yeah, it's huge, and not just on the military side of things. Whether you're hunting, just like you said, and you have it, just home protection. There's times that, I always run it. I just go out in the yard, and let's just say you hear something bump in the night. You go out there with night vision, there's still shadows, there's still places people can hide. Thermal, you're not hiding from it at all.
Yep.
You just can't. You've I'm sure seen it, look through his goggles. I prefer a fused system. I have a set of Fusion goggles. My tube is out right now, of course, on the fused side, so it's a little harder to get that fixed because everything has to be co-aligned. But that's the goggle I prefer, is a fused system versus, and right now I'm just running this. This is the new thermal augmentation device from Optics One. It's the TAD. It clips onto any night vision device. So it just simply clips on. There's an attachment ring here. You get the ring for whatever goggle it is that you're running, whether it's a 14, a Pano, 15, 31s, and then this little device with this little periscope. So your thermal is here, it picks up and then projects it in through here. So as you clip it on, it gives you that thermal image outline. It does like a high res image. It does a bunch of different things, black hot, white hot.
Super cool.
Yeah, so it's awesome.
I'm Googling that as we speak.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, TAD. And I'm a dealer, so I could get you some. And it's good priced for them. Like they originally came out with the Cody, the clip-on thermal imager. Then they came out with the E-Cody, which was the enhanced clip-on thermal imager that tied in with like TAC. It did augmented reality. Like it just does a lot more and was a better thermal, better FPA inside of there. This one is the latest and greatest one. They kind of went back to building, I hate to call it a dumb thermal, but it doesn't tie in with TAC. It doesn't do like most guys don't need that. They're not running ATAC. You know, you just want, hey, I just want thermal capability added to my night vision goggles. That's what this does. It has a built-in compass, so you can put on the display, and it has a digital compass in your view, and then it gives you that thermal window. I think it's like a 33-degree window inside your 40-degree window of your nods, and it gives you that ability to see, which is awesome. The downside to that type of technology is it's projected into the tube. So the whole image comes through your night vision tube and through your phosphor screen, so it changes the color of it. Where a fusion goggle, with the Fuse device, they project that thermal image behind the night vision tube, so it can be whatever color that they set it up to be.
I see.
Yeah, on my goggle, it's like a mustard yellow. On the new goggle, the new fused Bino, it's a purple. I think it's just purple. There's another goggle out there that the Chinese launched that's almost identical to the new Fusion goggle. That's selectable, either like a yellow or I think a purple. And it's pretty decent. Like we can get into that, but it's a decent setup. I don't know the durability of it. I don't know the longevity of it, but you're going to save a shit ton of money on that system.
The augmented reality stuff that you're talking about, that's where it has like the compass. So a friend of mine has them where I forgot what he called these things, but they're sort of like, I guess they have this like a very similar function to Fusion goggles, but they have like a compass in it. Like you could turn your head and see like a compass, like it's constantly moving. Is that what?
So the augmented, so those are overlays. So you can have whatever overlays you want in your screen. You could have your 10-digit grid coordinate. You could have compass heading, you know, and then the little bar tape that shows you as you turn, like it's moving like a compass. The augmented reality is literally that. It's augmented reality projected on your display. So the first example of that, remember Pokemon Go, where you had all these people like walking around with their phone, like chasing shit down the middle of the road and across somebody's yard. They're like looking on their screen and they see a Pokemon, like, hey, there's one in my front yard. That's what this is. So in your display, easiest example is you build a route. So you're moving from point A to point B, and in between you have like waypoint 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then your target. You would actually plug and load all that data into your goggle. And then as you look out in the environment, you'll actually see like your floating icon, the waypoint where you're looking, and it can give you direction and distance to it. And then you can look over, okay, there's my second waypoint, third. Oh, there's the objective. Like the target is over there.
It's like Call of Duty.
Yes. Yep. Yeah. It's pretty wild. It's neat. But it can be information overload. You know, you can have all this data in there, which can be great, but then you just have so much shit going on, you lose sight of, wait, what am I doing? What am I looking for? Like, oh, yeah, I'm just trying to see what's going on here at night.
I would venture to guess most people don't need that.
No, not at all. I mean, it's cool. You know, the eCody does it. You can have him pump all that stuff in there. And then the new fused Bino, the new fused Pano, all have it. But power hungry, requires, you know, different voltage. That's kind of some of how this whole thing came about, the new helmet, this new rail link system and everything from Gentex Ops Core, with providing more power and lightening everything up, and, you know, and overall giving you a better feel and fit on a helmet.
Yeah. So I have to ask, because people are gonna wonder. So like you talked about the Chinese night vision, right? You mentioned that they were cheaper, so people are gonna be like, is it worth it? Should I look at those? It's cheaper. He said they were okay. My personal feelings is like, if you don't know if it's going to last, you should probably just save a little bit more and buy the real thing. But if it is an option, like, what are the pros and cons of it?
All right. So they are cheaper. I will say that. Now, just like anything, you know, we look at whether you're buying American made or Chinese made. A lot of the stuff coming out of China is a little bit cheaper made. I mean, it's cheaper manufactured. That's why it's less expensive. So you're paying for what you're going to get. The stuff that I have looked through, I hate to say I'm impressed, but I was shocked at like how good it was. Not comparable to, US as far as tube manufacturing goes yet. The thermal is very good, but again, I have no idea on the durability and how long this stuff's going to last. You might buy it, get a great price on it, and then you just through normal use, shit just stops working. Are you going to be able to even get it warranted or fixed?
Yeah.
Because here's what's happening is a couple things. The Chinese are flooding the US market with night vision and thermal because there is no market over in China for it. Like, dudes aren't running around with that crap on. It's all here in the US. Like, night vision world right now is the suppressor world of, a few years ago. Like, everybody was making suppressors and it's the hotness. Well, now it's night vision. You have all these new companies standing up, just basically buying tubes and then putting them in somebody else's housing, whatever, and then just selling shit. So everybody's selling night vision right now. So the Chinese are flooding the market with it. And these guys, which this sort of pisses me off, but you have all these civilians running around. And if you get on, like, I get on Reddit's, like one of their night vision pages and forums and just read shit. And a lot of times,
that like?
there are so many experts like out there, which you see the same in the shooting world. You get on anywhere and somebody's been shooting for a year and, oh man, they're better than everybody else out there and they're about to start their training company. But it is flooded with these guys that all they want to do is act like they know everything. And then what they're doing in turn is they're buying this Chinese stuff because it's affordable. They're providing feedback on what's not right or what could be better. That shit's going straight back to China. China's fixing it, advancing it, and fielding it directly to their military. That's why they started these companies up. They're front companies for their military. They are getting all this feedback from US civilians, and the US civilians are advancing the Chinese military.
We are their R&D.
Yes, that is exactly what is happening. I mean, this is top level meetings and different things I've been on. Like, this is what's happening. And these guys, these civilians are just ready to get on Reddit and tell the world how smart they are. And, oh, that's what's wrong with this goggle. And this is what needs to be fixed. And they're just reading through that shit and, making updates and or getting it directly from them through the US seller, which half of that, and this is the scary thing about, even spending the money on a set of these goggles, is they're not supposed to be sold in the US. Half of it's just ripped off technology. Like, if you get on and Google right now, Max, the 1431. So I have L3's 1531. If you Google a 1431, it is the Chinese exact replica ripoff of this goggle right here. You will not be able to tell the difference from picture when you look at even the little orange, like the O-ring stuff that's in the bridge right here for the articulation. It's identical, right? And they call it a 1431. Well, they're already on like version 2 or 3 of it because people are providing feedback and then they're correcting it. Well, they get caught and now they just change the name. That's all they're doing is changing the name of the company they're selling it under, rename it, and then just resell it. The inventory never leaves, never does anything. And again, then you have these US not even manufacturers, US resellers that are just as bad because they know they're selling Chinese shit and they're straight up selling it. I mean, Max, you find it?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. It's identical. I mean, It is a straight, it's total patent infringement, everything that's illegal that you can't do, and yeah, they're doing it. But to answer your question, sorry, I'll get on a tangent sometimes.
No, it's good.
So I would be leery of it. Yes, I've seen it. It looks decent. The tubes are just Gen 2. Again, they're Photonis copies. The thermal quality is good, scary good. But get a good warranty. If you're buying it from one of these resellers in the US, you better ask and say, hey, what happens when they get caught and now this company changes name? Are you still warranting this product I'm buying from you? I don't care what it's called and what the name is. I have a receipt from you that says I bought X, Y, or Z. How long are you going to warranty this actual product? Not, oh, nope, warranty's done because the company went bankrupt and changed their name. Now it's this, but it's the same exact thing. That's the scary part of somebody buying this stuff is it's probably going to be buy it and you're stuck with what you got.
Well, it's not like you're saving a ton of money either, right? Like if
Well, it's still I just looked at it. I mean, it's still $8,000.
Yeah. And it depends on the tubes. So some of the manufacturers, what they're doing is they're taking those housings and they're still putting L3 or L-bit tubes. Yeah.
US Night Vision is something I hate to name drop, but that is literally the first Google result. They're putting L-bit tubes in it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that's where your cost is. That's why those are 8. If you get it with Chinese tubes, you're looking at like $4,000, $5,000 for a set of dual tubes. Those fused panos. So look this up, and I know everybody that's listening is about to go jump on this probably. I've thought about buying a set. I just taught a course in North Carolina, and a police department was actually demoing these and the L3 fused systems. And I looked at them compared side by side. But the RIX Tactical, so RIX Tactical, it's the RENV B. It's an enhanced night vision binocular, but RENV-B. And it is a fused dual tube goggle. You can get it without tubes for like $5,600. You can get it with up to 1,600 FOM white Chinese tubes for $92.99. Or you could get it with up to 2,000 FOM tubes for over $11,000. I could sell you a set of fused L3 goggles right now, and they're going to be just shy of $50,000.
Right.
Yeah. You could buy 4 sets of these and still be less.
I like on their website they say "hot" next to them, as if they're like stolen or something.
Yeah, it's nuts, man. I looked through them. They were decent. Now, granted, I didn't spend a bunch of time on them. I just looked through them and looked at the thermal, looked at the, the outline mode, and I was like, wow. And this one kind of neat that the others aren't doing. It comes with a little Bluetooth remote that you could just wear on your kit. So when you want to change modes, you don't have to come up to your goggle to go through buttons. You just, your remote, wherever you might have it, whether it's on your gun or whatever, you just cycle through, your outline modes or your color modes and your display.
I mean, they look pretty fly, but I think like for these ones that I'm looking at, the RNV 31S's, it's like $51.59, so $5,159. It's that's still not like
it's chump change.
low. No,
Right.
Dude, it's still expensive. It's like, I don't know. And then it says warranty 3 years. Do you even get the 3-year? Who knows? I don't think it's worth it. How about lasers? Have you seen like the Somo Gear lasers? I see a ton of these things come through classes, and like students are like, "Hey, these things are great. It's just like a full power laser, but it's from China, and they could ship it straight to your door. It's like just as powerful."
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Somo
Gear. Yeah, I'm about to send you down a rabbit hole.
Oh God. Okay. Yeah. So this is a Chinese complete ripoff of an NGAL. Yes, I've seen some guys chat about this. Yeah, that's cheap too. $450.
Yep.
Designed for airsoft use. Cool.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
Apparently they're like fully potted and everything.
Put it on the Scar Heavy and see what happens.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's it's a Hajimoto with Sony guts. I mean, I don't, I haven't seen any come through that I know of. I mean, some guys buy these things and they think they're real. I mean, that happens. So I work with Core Survival, and we make the Hellstar, the strobes, IR strobes for the helmets. Dude, this thing's been ripped off so much by Chinese. They sell them on eBay. They sell them everywhere, and they sell for like $200 retail. Guys buy them for like $30 or $40, and then they break or they get water leakage and rust, and then they call us and say they want a refund or they want it swapped out for a new one. Yeah. I'm like, dude, it's a Chinese made. Like, you can tell the buttons are just flimsy. Like, just by looking at them, you can be like, dude, that's not ours. Oh, well, they said it was a authentic, Yeah, okay, but you paid $30 for it on eBay. Like, I mean, yeah. So I don't know. I'm tempted to order one of these just to test it and see see what it's like, but
yeah, I mean, typically when people have shown me those things, because I certainly don't have as many lasers, I'm sure, as you, but like I've got a Radex, I've got an NGAL, I've got one of the new OGLs coming. When people show me like these Somo gear things, I'm like, man, even if it was only $600, like you might as well, like if it breaks, you might as well just light $600 on fire. Now, like if you can afford that, by all means do it. However, I think there's better options out there, and you can get like one that has a warranty on it. It's like you say, like if that, I don't know about that laser specifically, but maybe if it breaks, you don't get the type of warranty that you would on one that is actually legit. Maybe if you bought like a Steiner D-ball, something like that. So
it is. You're totally gambling on something like this, and that's why their out is designed for airsoft use.
Yeah,
I mean, I've seen that. I've seen that with other stuff where they do that. Now, I mean, and here's something I learned not too long ago, and I want to say, I think it was from the fishing side of things. The Chinese rip off a bunch of everything. What happens is, U.S. makers will go to China to get molds made because it is cheaper. And as soon as that mold is made and they're done with their contract or whatever it might be, they sign paperwork that the mold was destroyed. No, the employees take it out back and they sell it. They sign you the paperwork that, hey, this mold was destroyed. They go right out the back door and they sell it to their buddy for pennies on the dollar. And then they down the road are making an exact copy because they're using your mold. They have your mold, that you went to China to get made. So that's why and how some of this stuff looks.
I've spent the last, I guess, 14 years now in manufacturing, and it's all in China. And it's the funny thing is that we're imposing Western morals on people who they don't even see it as wrong. This is just part of doing business, and frequently too, even beyond just them taking it out back and selling it, or it fell off a truck. We'll work with factories that it's just part of the agreement. We'll make this for you, but
it's wild.
It's ours now too, and it's always we won't sell it in the U.S. domestic market. We won't sell it in the European market, and we'll only sell it in the Chinese market.
Right.
That never lasts that long.
Yeah. Once they see that they can make money somewhere else with it or in the U.S., it's
But the free there, and this is, we could get into macroeconomic and manufacturing policy, but you're also kind of up a creek. They're the only folks who can make molds and parts at the quality and that's you get to talk about Chinese quality, and they can make whatever you tell them to make at the highest quality you want them to make it. It comes down to QC, and that's where I get worried about when it's Chinese stuff like we were talking about. You may get 1 of 10 that is perfect, but the other 9 of 10 are floated by the QC guy, and you have no idea who ever looked at them.
Oh yeah. They've got at pails on here. They even have the old PEC 2 on here. Heck, you can buy what they call a UHP, but let me see what the specs are on it.
They're pretty bright. I've looked at them with nods on. It's pretty insane. Like it looks like a full power laser.
Yeah.
Well, that feels like a use case thing to me too, right? And I feel like you could justify spending as little or as much money as you want to spend. But like if you have a dedicated blue gun, Sims gun that you're training with all the time.
Sure.
I could see buying the $600 laser instead of a $3,000 laser for that gun, and as long as it performs relatively similar, I could see that. But again, are you going to end up spending $600 every year as opposed to $3,000 and it lasts for 5-10 years? Then maybe it doesn't make as much sense.
Yeah. Scary. But
all right,
all this stuff is out there. So
all right. That being said, what is a good laser for people to look at? Do they need a full power laser?
No.
Okay.
No, they don't. There's tactical advantages to having a full power laser and pushing a lot of power out, but for most people, no. And then, probably just COTS item, commercial off the shelf, brightest laser that currently is out there, in the U.S. manufacturing is B.E. Myers Mall. That civilian mall is super bright. It still meets the FDA requirement of being eye safe because of the way that they're emitting the VCSEL lasers. They're actually emitting, like 4 eye safe lasers to merge to create one, which gives you this super bright image. I'm not a huge fan of the mall only because most guys are right-handed. And when you mount the mall on your rail, so it mounts on top and it's ambidextrous, so it kind of sits off either to the right side if you're right-handed or to the left if you're lefty. When you actually look at where the 2 lasers emit out of that unit, the visible laser is closer to your bore, the IR laser is further away. So when you look at your converging or a parallel zero, you are over 2 inches to start with off a bore, which is huge. That's greater than every other laser out there. The only ones that, right now, really that's doing it right, the new Dagger from B.E. Myers is a direct over bore. I think, and I don't have one yet, but I've got one on the way, Envision. I think Envision did it also. Theirs is direct over bore.
The Wilcox Raid X's as well.
It's not direct over bore, but it's very close. But here's where they screwed up, right?
The Viz? Oh, you mean the
actual. So if you look,
yep.
Yeah. So that is your flood, right? Yep. One of these sides, I can't remember which is which. One is your Viz laser, one's your IR. So they are slightly off axis, but they're very, very close. Your weapon system is not going to outshoot what that is, right? Most ARs are 2-minute of angle guns.
Yeah.
So when you look, right, they are slightly off. But here's where it can create some issues is, when guys set their gun up, and I'd like to chat a little bit at some point here about zeroing the lasers, right? Because there is some misconception out there, and I've seen some bad videos on the internet.
Yep.
So when a lot of guys will use their Viz laser to mark their target and then go back and use their IR laser to shoot. You can't do that with this because your Viz laser is emitting on one side of your bore and your IR is actually shooting on the other. So if you think you're setting up for a parallel, you're actually shooting a converging. And it's similar with the others you can do it. So with your NGAL, you're directly one on top of the other. So your Viz laser emits down here, your IR is actually a little bit above. On your PEC, it's the same, it's slightly offset, but your Viz laser shoots out down here. Your IR is actually higher, but it's closer to bore. So it's actually a little bit better having it, at that, not at that angle. It's okay. I'd rather have it straight up and down. But if you set up your target with your Viz laser, then you'd actually want to either just use your nods and set it up with your IR or know this offset and then just, slide your aiming pointer or whatever over. I use glint tape. The same with the B.E. Myers. I don't have one here to show you, but how that one emits differently also, but there's a big enough gap in there that I make guys use their IR emitter, focus their nods down and make the mark on their target using the IR for that purpose.
All right.
Yeah.
So zeroing these things. So I'll share my frustrations. So I use the glint tape, right? Throw that up there, and man, it takes me way longer to zero these things than it does like a daytime optic. Oftentimes I'm like, God damn it. Mag number 2 in the gun. Yep. It is very difficult to get a very precise zero. And by precise, I mean if I say a converging zero at 50, right? It is very different from zeroing a daytime optic, at least for me personally, right? For me, if I'm zeroing a daytime optic, just as an example, at 50 yards, I'm looking for bullets to be touching inside of the thing that I'm trying to hit, right? With a laser, though, that's significantly harder. So what are some tips? So parallel zero, converging zero, which one is the optimal one? And what are some tips that people can use to actually get a proper zero on these things?
All right. So, yeah. All right. I'll give you all my all my tidbits and everything I can share here. I mean, I'll share everything. There's nothing I'm holding back here. All right. So first and foremost, let's just chat real quick about converging versus parallel. I don't care. I like a parallel. Most guys that come through my course, I talk about both, and I tell them, hey, we're going to zero tonight. That's, that's day one at night. That's, the last thing that we're going to do is actually zero, because we're doing other stuff before. We're not shooting guns to that point. So we go through this zero process, and I tell everybody, hey, we're going to shoot it at 50, right? Because most guys run a 5200 zero. We can argue that, right, what it actually is, but for sake of whatever, 5200 zero on your day optic. Let's mirror that on our laser. And again, keep in mind, I teach a lot of law enforcement. Nothing wrong with them. Awesome dudes. They just don't have the budget and the training time for them to shoot a ton.
And you get it all figured out.
Exactly. And you have guys that put in the extra effort and go shoot. But I always tell guys, hey, make sure that whatever you're doing with your weapon system and setting your guns up, set it up the same. So everybody's the same. But then set it up for your lowest common denominator, right? That guy that's on your team that doesn't give a shit, he qualifies once a year. Other than that, he doesn't touch his gun because he don't have to. He don't care, right? And nobody could fire him for it because he's meeting the minimum standard. So if your day optic is set for 5200, then set your laser up for the same. Take the thinking out of it. When you're at night, now limited field of view, and you have all these other things going on, don't have something else to think about, right? So I like zeroing at 50, not 25. Same with like day optic wise. I mean, you got to give that bullet time to do something, right?
Sure.
Parallel versus converging. Guys can do whatever they want. I talk about both. I show the pluses and minuses of both. I'm a big fan of parallel. Like I always shoot a parallel. Most guys after coming through my course and me explaining both do a parallel at 50. Here's what I tell guys if you're going to do a converging is it's absolutely fine. I did it for years, but this is where it sort of goes against my rule of, my gun is set up with a 50-yard zero, set your laser up for that. If you're going to do a converging, I tell guys do it at 100, right? Because if you have whatever your offset is for your laser, from bore to your actual laser, if you have one that has an offset, which most all of them do, all right? Let's just say it's 1/4 of an inch, right? 1/4 of an inch offset on an NGAL. Well, now at CQB distance at the gun, I'm off from where my bullet's going to impact and where my laser emits by 1/4 of an inch. It's going to get closer and closer and closer and more accurate all the way till 100, right? And then it's going to take another 100 yards for it to be that same distance, but on the other side, right? Because that's what some guys don't understand with a converging zero is you have a convergence, but then you have a divergence. So worst case scenario, and I had a training class where I went down and taught a team, and they were sold by the manufacturer or by this rep, right? This salesperson that sold them their lasers, a 10-yard converging zero.
Ooh.
And I went, okay. I was like, do you guys shoot that at any other distance? They're like, oh yeah, we shoot it at 100. And I was like, where are you aiming? They're like, oh, low left hip. And I'm like, okay, good on you that you understand that and you know what's happening. But I go, think about this. Let's just say you get into an engagement, and they almost nearly had an engagement at night prior to my course with a guy about 100 yards away in an open field, right? What would have happened, even though you train it and you shoot it? Think about that lowest common denominator guy on your team. Yeah. In the heat of the moment, when bullets are flying at you, you're not thinking. They're going to put their laser right on that guy's chest and fire rounds. And where are they going? They're flying over his head, over his shoulder, into what? Into a school, into a playground, into a neighborhood. You have no idea where those rounds are going, you know?
Or if they didn't have an entire man-sized target to aim at. It's like, people say this with like daytime optics too, like, oh, it doesn't matter. I could hit a man-sized target. And it's like, yeah, but what if you don't have a man-sized target to aim at?
Right.
It doesn't matter until it does. So.
Yeah, low left hip is not precise. Are you talking like what does that mean? If all you have is this, what does that mean?
Yeah, where are you aiming? What's your reference point now? It is not the hip. You don't have a hip. You have
is it a car door? Is it a bedroom door? Is it a bed? What is that? Yeah. Yikes.
That's a good point. But so nothing wrong with a converging zero at all. And some guys will argue, well, you take the the error, the 2 minute of angle gun and the ammo and the shooter, and the people draw this cone and they're like, well, now your error inside this cone of your gun and with your converging is like, look, again, I'm teaching a lot of law enforcement, and I'm like, let's say you get into a shoot at night, right, with some guy. Now you're on the stand and you have some lawyer going, hey, you understand your gun, right? In your system. Now you understand your laser. Yes, I do. Okay, well, you made an engagement, whatever, whether it was a good shot, a bad shot, whatever it is. And he goes, well, where exactly is your laser hitting at 80 yards? Where exactly is your laser hitting at 100 yards? With a converging zero, do you know exactly where your round is in relation to your laser at all those distances? Most likely not, because yes, you have it getting closer, then diverging, but then you also have gravity taking over beyond 100, 125, whatever it is, right? Mm-hmm. Now it's starting to diverge and arc away from, the opposite side of the laser. With a parallel zero, right? And I've done this on numerous guys on their guns. Like if I'm aiming, right here at the X, when I pull the trigger on this at CQB distance, I'm hitting a little bit low and to the left of 1/4 of an inch, right? Whatever my height over bore is in that offset. And then at 25, I'm half the distance. At 50, I'm right there, just next to the X-ring. And then at 75, I'm here. At 100, I'm here, 125. And then comes back down. At 200, I'm back on again, 225. So it's like, look, I am always 1/4 of an inch. Granted, you're going to have error of the gun and bullet and shooter. But generally speaking, like I am always inside that black from CQB distance out to almost 250 yards.
With a parallel zero.
With a parallel zero. It's just right here.
And for those people listening, maybe they don't know what a parallel zero is. Well, I'll let you explain it. Yeah. Like the way that I try to conceptualize it is like the zeros are exactly that. They're parallel to one another.
Yeah. So when you have your rifle, and you have that, your day optic, everybody understands and should understand their day optic. Your day optic sits directly over the barrel. So it's perfect. Like it sits, whatever your height over bore is, what we're doing is telling that bullet at whatever fixed distance, so 50 yards, hey, bullet, when you leave the gun, I'm going to angle you at a slight upward angle, because bullets don't leave a gun and rise, right? A bullet is dumb. It's going to go straight wherever the barrel is pointing it to go. We, in essence, are angling the barrel slightly up so that when that bullet departs the gun, it's going to rise. And then at, say, 50 yards, it gets directly on line with our dot that we're looking through. That is a straight line out to infinity, whatever your dot or reticle, whatever you're using. It's rising and getting, boom, directly in line at what I'm looking at 50. And then every action has an opposite or equal reaction. It's physics, right? It's going to continue to rise until it runs out of gas, and then it starts to fall back down. And hey, well, lo and behold, it crosses that same line again. That's how we end up with 2 zeros. When we talk about our laser, since the laser is not like our day optic, we have a height, but we don't have it directly over the barrel, that when that bullet departs, right, our laser now, that straight line out to infinity, we can visually see it, right, at what we're aiming at, but it is slightly offset of the barrel to the left or to the right, depending on what laser you're shooting. So now that it's slightly off to the side, that bullet departs, and all we're doing is the same exact thing as our day optic with a parallel zero. We're making that bullet rise in a straight line, like out the barrel, and then it intersects, or doesn't intersect, but it rises up to be in line with that laser, wherever that was pointing at 50. And then the bullet's going to rise up, and then it's going to come back down, be on again at the second distance, and then start to fall away. So with a parallel, it is always whatever that offset is, right? Generally 1/4 inch, 1/2 inch, 3/4 of an inch or something with most of our lasers. It's just that bullet is going to always impact slightly to the left or to the right of that laser, depending on your setup. Converging, it's like, hey, nope, I want you two to intersect. And it's the same as our day optic. We have a converging zero on our day optic, right? Mm-hmm. And we're fortunate, since it's directly over the barrel, that it converges here, and then on its divergence, it's straight over it, and then it comes back down and hits again. A bullet does not go left or right and then hook back. So when you do that with a laser, since it's off to one side or the other, it's going to angle to intersect with that laser, but then it's going to continue riding on that angle. It doesn't hook around and come back to give me a second zero. With a parallel, you do have that. You're mimicking almost identical to what you have with your day optic. You're just slightly off whatever your offset is, and that's why the better lasers have the middle amount of offset Some of the newer ones coming out finally are directly over bore so that you get rid of all this offset. And we only have the offset because of front sight posts, right? All the M4s had a front sight post right here, so you had to work around the front sight post. When these new lasers came out, example, you're getting ready to get the OGL from EOTech. I love EOTech. That's all I run for optics, you know, is the EOTech on my guns. But when that laser came out, I was like, really, guys? I'm like, you missed the mark. You know, it's like, why did you not create something directly over bore? Like, you're launching a new laser right now. You departed from L3. I get it. They should have done one directly. If that thing was direct over bore, they would have hit a home run with it.
But you'll be killed in the streets without backup iron sights.
Yeah. Yep. Exactly. You can see those are all over my gun, right? Yep.
Yeah. Mine too. Mine too.
Then in the back. Yeah. I have a slot for it, but it's not. Yeah. It's not
there.
Whoops! They must have fallen off. Yeah. What I tell a lot of guys with the backups is if you're running a laser, right here, your Viz, and a lot of them have Viz override on a button. That's your backup aiming device. That's your daytime backup aiming device.
And it is so much easier than freaking iron sights.
Your hand's already right there. Like, instead of having to go, oh, let me flip this up and flip this up and then shoot something that's probably not even zeroed anyway, right? Just slide your finger back to your Viz. So if your SOP, for those law enforcement guys that might be listening, if your SOP does not state a mechanical backup aiming device, if you're running a laser with Viz, there's your backup aiming device if you have to have one. I wouldn't mess with flip ups, but that's just me.
Yeah, I'm the same way. All right. Laser location on the rail. There are several different places where I'm sure you see a metric crap ton of different locations where people put their laser, whether it's forward, backwards, sometimes up on these diving board things. What are your thoughts on laser location? What would be ideal? Put it to you like that.
For me, right there, it's on the end of the gun. So ideal for me is on the end of the gun. And the reason is, that's generally where my hand is to operate, or it's slightly behind it. I see guys that put their lasers further back here, and then their grip is still out on the end of the gun, and now their hand or thumb is blocking their illuminator or blocking the laser. Like, you can't have that. Why do you have that on there if now you're blocking it? You're not utilizing it. So I say push it to the end, but make sure it makes sense if you're using the buttons that are on top to operate it, not a pressure pad, which I always run pressure pads, especially, this one with the NGAL has the Viz override button on it. I'm a huge fan of that. I like it. So
the exact same spot and everything.
Yep. So that's the way I run mine. And then my pressure pad right there for my light is on this side. So with my grip, I can easily operate it. And then, I can even operate it if I go support side. I can still manipulate both laser and light easily. But yeah, I would say push it out. Just make sure your hand's not there. If you had to run it for some reason, you have a short gun or there's something else up here and you just can't put your lasers to the end, just make sure your hand's not blocking it. I have seen issues where certain weapon systems, like the forward gas block, is part of the rail system, and it is a more solid mounting solution than your rail, than your handguard system back here, where that's definitely better. It's a more solid solution. And then I've seen it where guys will move it to that off of a rail to that forward rail on the gas block, and it moves the zero. And they have to re-zero or remake an adjustment. But put it up there. Definitely, this is another thing too, is top mount it. There is one laser out there that I know of that Hollow Sun makes that is designed to go on the left side of the weapon system. And it specifically, like, you'll know it because even if you look at it online, you see the adjusters. So your top adjuster, just like your day, any day optic, not a Hollow Sun, or not your holographic, but any of your day optics, that top turret is pushing or allowing that aperture to move up and down. That's your up and down travel. The one on the side is pushing or allowing it to come back left and right. Same thing with your laser. Top one is up and down. Your side one is left and right. Same thing with the maul. that goes either side, but you'll notice when you flip it over, depending on where you are, there's one on the top or the bottom, and there's one on the side for your up and down. But you need to make sure that you mount your laser on top at 12 o'clock, because that's what is going to put the laser, the IR laser, as close to the bore as possible to give you the tightest and the best zero. When you start moving these things off to the left and to the right, it really increases that offset immensely of a parallel and or that offset to converge and then diverge on a converging zero. So you have to be careful with it. Always try to get it on top. As far as those diving boards and stuff go, I mean, the Hydra mount, that thing's just crazy. If you're a giraffe, sure, maybe it'll work for you. I get its concept, like, short barrel guns, you just don't have the real estate. And that one Unity came out with, and that I don't know if they make that diving board or somebody else does that attaches.
I think it's HRF Concepts.
Yeah, so that is lower. It's better, but those are designed for short rails. That's it. If you've got the rail space, get your laser out towards the end. Have it there close to the barrel. I'm not a big fan of all this height over bore. That could be a whole nother animal and can of worms that we open up. But
I totally plan on asking you. So
yeah, sweet. Yeah, this ought to be good. You could blow the internet up with some of these conversations. I'm telling you. Man.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of these like big diving boards either. I bought it just because I see these things show up in classes a ton, and man, for me, it's like zeroing lasers is hard enough. When it's up on this thing, dude, there's like so much offset. And then it's like, hey, you almost have to do a parallel zero on this thing. Like if you did a converging, what's your converging? Like where does this thing hit at 200?
Right.
Ooh, the hell knows, man. Way too much. Yeah, way too much going on with this, in my opinion. All right. So you brought it up, high mounts. Let's talk about it. Because I know I've seen you run Wilcox risers, right? So maybe talk about what's the deal with the high mounts, and then we can go into Wilcox stuff a little bit later. But
yeah, so I'm a huge fan of minimal height over bore, right? So again, if you go back to your target, and whatever your offset is of your height over bore for your setup, that's increasing the under travel from CQB distance to whatever you're zeroed at, and then the over travel of the round. So you're overall increasing the size of your group, right? The higher you are over bore. And think about, again, the lowest common denominator, the lowest guy on the team, or a dude that just wants to buy a weapon setup for home protection, whatever it might be, and doesn't shoot a lot and understand where his holds are. And in the middle of combat or in the middle of a firefight, you can't just go, hey man, time out and let me laser, range find this target and go, okay, he's at this distance. All right, I have this zero. All right, I want to shoot him right here, so I know I need to aim where. Right? You don't have that time. You don't have that luxury. The flatter that you can make your zero and your overall setup, the better. Now, with that being said, for years I've run just an EOTech flat on my 416. And then when we went to, and this was in, my realm here, when we talk about, me working in CDD and doing the vast job, our short barrel gun, right, which we call our confined space assault weapon. So it was a HK 416 with like a 11 or 11.5 inch barrel, whatever it was. I don't remember. We were assigned, and we did a down select. I ran the program for an optic and a magnifier to go on that weapon system. Now, guys could put whatever they wanted. It didn't matter, but we would assign an optic to every weapon system so that it could be carried in the arms room, and guys had the option. You could put whatever you wanted on there, and then individually squadrons would buy whatever guys wanted also. It didn't matter. But at least this way, the unit bought them, and they were there in the inventory if you wanted it. So the EOTech, the XPS is what we went with. We could have got for free the EXPS, right? Which the difference is it has the buttons on the side, and it has the throw lever, which increases the height over bore by 7 millimeters. Yeah, so that optic right there, we could have got them all for free.
There we go.
Because they were part of the SOP mod program. but we didn't want that additional 7 millimeters of height. And we didn't want the throw lever. We don't care. We're putting it on the gun. It's not coming off. And not really a big fan of the buttons on the side, just with kit and everything. Everybody's wearing stuff differently. Like when your weapon's sitting on you, can get bumped. So anyway, we went with the XPS. Ended up having come out of our budget and buy them. We competed all the different 3x magnifiers that were out there. At the time, EOTech had theirs and Aimpoint had theirs. The Aimpoint one was real fish-eyed. The EOTech one had way better glass, super clean. So we went with this. As soon as we got them in, they came originally with that Samson flip mount, which is a piece of shit. Spring-loaded, you push a button, and then it would go over, and half the time it would go over and then off your gun, like it would break and fly off. Just, it was horrible, right? And then as guys mounted when guys mounted them, they would mount it in various locations on the rail or different spacing, and you would see the top of your EOTech or the side of your EOTech, like everything just wasn't lined up perfectly. So that's when I went to Wilcox and I said, hey, Jim, I want to build a riser. I said, I want it to have one spot where the EOTech mounts, and I want one spot where the 3x mounts. He already had a version of this flip mount right here that was for the front of the gun for the Skeet IR. So it was reversed. It would mount in front of your optic, and you could mount the Skeet IR on it and flip it to the side if you didn't want it or whatever it was, right? So I said, hey, I love that mount. I want that mount in this thing, that flip piece, because it has also, the ability to quickly detach the Skeet originally, but that would be for the 3x, would quickly detach from there. And we did the built-in block for your rear flip up, and then it comes with another little riser that goes on the front if you want to run your, co-witness your front iron with whatever height. But I was adamant, and I said, hey, man, I want this to be as low as absolutely possible. So we built this version here, which is the one I run. The rise on it is a .410. I have one right here. So the 410 was the rise on it. So you can see, it sits pretty low. And his engineers came up with this unique way to mount it, because the original version that he showed me had the thumb bars on it, right? That would grab onto the rail, but it sat over a 1/2 inch tall. And I was like, unacceptable. I was like, I don't want it that tall. I was like, I want this thing on the dirt, like as low as you can possibly make it. So they had to totally re-engineer and come up with an attaching method that's different than anything else on the market. You have to take your rear charging handle off, and then this slides on the back of the gun, because these are fixed. They're machined in part of this mount. So it slides on to keep it as low as possible. And then you have these shims that will go in here. You don't have to run them, but they help when you get it on there to pop them in, and you're directly in the Picatinny rail. But then you just take these 4 set screws here, and like you're doing a tire, you just kind of individually go through, and you could be anal, you should be with it, level the gun, put this on there, put a level on here, start tightening them down, and keep this mount level the best that you can with the gun when you tighten them all. But you tighten those down, and then boom, it's locked in, it's on the gun, and it's super low. And then again, I throw my XPS, which is lower than the EXPS on there. And I have no clue what that overall height is. Like, I know guys now I see articles and guys wrapped around the exact number of what their height. Dude, this works. This works for me. Yeah. I know this is a .410 only because that's how it's labeled, and I remember it from when we built it. We also make a 5/8. But I have no idea what my EOTech, what the number is on that, and I've never added them together because I don't care. Like, this is what works for me. I can shoot it. I can shoot it with nods on, no problem. It works with ProMask. Like, I don't care what that number is. Like, this is what I run, and this is what works.
I think it's important. I think the important thing to note there for the conversation that exists on the internet about it is that the problem set for that was not to build a riser. The problem set was to build a way to locate the EOTech and the magnifier on a rifle, and it had to be some sort of riser, but the idea was to eliminate as much of the rise as possible. It was not supposed to be a riser. It's supposed to be a locator. I think that's really, because everybody's like, well, look, I can run a riser because these guys had this. They made a riser. They didn't make a riser. You made a locator.
Exactly. Now, what we did do was made a 5/8 version of this exact same style. And you don't we didn't have to. There's another version that has the thumb bars that screw in. I just don't like it. It's more clanky, whatever. This is slicker. But we did do a 5/8 version of this for guys that do like a little bit of rise. And here's my take on all this rise, right? Is, it's gotten to be extreme over, a course of however many years since Unity came out with their original one. Somebody was paid a lot of money to promote that thing and say it was the greatest thing since sliced bread, and that everybody now is passive aiming and this is so much better for night vision. And dude, guys are still not passive aiming. Like, passive aiming is something you need to understand and, know how to do it. I make guys do it in the course just to say, hey man, yep, I've done it. I know how to do it if I need to. Sure, you can quietly take a shot. It's more about understanding all these different power levels on your laser, right? Yes, you may be going up an adversary that has night vision, but you shouldn't be on dual high in an area that's got all kinds of stuff in the atmosphere, so that when you do turn your laser on, it looks like you got a lightsaber all the way from your gun to the target. You're a dumbass. Like, go to low power then.
You mean like moisture in the air?
Yeah, moisture, okay. Like dust particles. Like, I've been on certain ranges where once we start shooting and the dust kicks up, dude, there's particles in the air and you could see all the little dust particles now flying around your laser, and you immediately then have to dim your power down. So guys need to understand the power levels, but a laser is way faster than passively aiming. Granted, you could get to be very quick with passive aiming and bringing the gun up, but what you'll never defeat is that field of view that you lose. You're now looking through a toilet paper tube and another toilet paper tube inside of whatever space CQB it is, and you've lost all your field of view. I mean, you have tunnel vision right there to be able to make that engagement, ensure that target drops, and then come off the gun. Where when you just, ID your threat, engage the laser, and you're shouldered the same, but you're not looking through anything, you're looking over the gun, you have all your field of view still, you make your engagement, and you continue to scan, right? Versus having to come in here, find your dot, engage, and then come off the gun to be able to look. It's just not as fast. I mean, I have guys do it on the range. I have everybody test it and, hey man, which do you like? I mean, I would much rather prefer engaging with my laser, but you got to know how to use your laser, when to turn it on, when to turn it off. I turn it off after every engagement, right? If I see a threat, then as I identify the threat, the gun comes up, it goes on fire, laser comes on, I engage, laser comes off, gun goes on safe. I'm not running around with my laser on all the time and going, man, what's that over there? And what's that over there? Like, if you think somebody has night vision or IR cameras or something around their structure, then you have to be conscious of your use of these, when and where you're using it. That's all. And how you're using it with what power level. So
makes total sense.
Yeah, sorry. Again, I'll get on a tangent about certain things, right? But to answer your original, I'm not a huge fan of high rise. Some guys do need a little bit more of a riser. Like, I mean, if your neck is longer, you want to keep a natural position. Like, your head and eyes should be upright. Your eyes are the laser beam. They should be staring at the threat. And all you're doing is bringing the weapon system in line with your vision, if you're passive aiming, or even if it's daytime, even same thing with pistol, right? When you guys teach pistol, I know, I've never seen you put out like, okay, guys, you're going to bring the gun up and then I want you to bring your head down to the gun. Like, no, you don't do that. Your head and neck, everything stays upright and natural. You want to be in a natural position, and you're bringing that dot into your natural line of vision, so you have the least amount of moving parts and pieces. So yeah, if you need some rise, then figure out what you need and make sure your gun is set up naturally. But if you get too crazy, like a hydro mount, now your CQB offset is crazy. You're aiming in the middle of the head, or you're having to aim over the head to drop rounds, right there in the forehead, or in the eye socket.
What really gets crazy is like that height of mount, and then something like a 36 yard zero, where like you're essentially making your max ordnance way higher than it would be. Whereas like if you had a regular height, maybe lower 1/3 or something like that, with like a 50 yard zero.
Yep.
The taller the mount and the shorter the zero, the more you are, creating the higher and higher max ordnance stuff.
Right. Yep.
Usually when people ask me about the really high mounts, because like I ran high mounts for a very long time, just exploring, like I still have a bunch of different high mounts, right? Mm-hmm. And I have them just because people come through classes and ask questions, and I just want to be able to articulate my opinions on them. But immediately dudes will be like, well, I have it on there because I can passively aim with nods. And, you know, as a civilian or even as a cop, right? My first question is like, well, what's the percentage of the time where you're doing that? Is it 1%, 2%? Maybe it's 5%, right? But the point is that 90 something percent of the other times you're not using that shit that you have on the gun. So like, I feel like setting the gun up for the 90 to 95% of the time, whatever the percent is, like that's a way smarter way to do it rather than like, hey, I'm setting it up for this 1%.
Yep. I'm huge on that. And I actually use that same exact analogy is I'm all about setting my gun up, my kit up, you know, your night vision. I know how you wear your night vision, all that for that 90 plus percent, you know, time that you're operating. Whatever your main mission and your focus is, that's how you set your kit up. That other percentage, 5%, whatever it might be, even if it's 10%, figure out your workarounds. Like figure out how am I going to do that? And I'll tell you, I mean, with this setup, I've run this setup forever. And I even ran this exact same setup on a 417. So a 7.62 gun, right? A short barrel 7.62 gun that I carried one rotation. I didn't have a variable power optic on there. I had an EOTech with a 3x magnifier on this exact same mount as low as possible because it works for me. And again, even when I am, and I do it, I'll passively aim with this. Okay. And when I have this in my shoulder and I come up with my nods, I can perfectly see through it. Perfectly see through it with my nods. I'm not doing anything crazy. I'm not bringing my head down. I'm not angling my head or kicking my head back.
Yep.
It works for everything that I need for me, for my mission. It may not work for everybody. That's why there's options out there. But, you know, figure out what works for you, that 90%, and run it.
Yeah. All right, you brought the gun out. People are going to wonder, how do you have that? How do you have that thing set up? Go ahead and like give us a rundown front to back.
A rundown front to back. All right, so I run whatever came on it back here. Like you know, it's adjustable 99% of the time. It's all the way out.
Yep.
You know, I'm running my mount, so the EOTech mount, you know, with the 3x. So I run a 3x EOTech. I run the XPS because I like that lower height on here. No backup irons. I'm running a Knights SR15. Absolutely love it. 14.5-inch barrel. Probably one of the best, you know, barrel lengths and gun setups that they make. It's a tack driver. My sling. So this is huge. I run a 2-point sling. This is a VTAC. I run this one or I'll run the padded version. I have it set up and taped and secured where the adjustment falls all the time, like right here. So I can quickly, easily get it. I see guys that'll run that adjuster and it's partway around their back and they're like, dude, that sling has so much adjustment. Like move it so it's in your window right here so that you can easily get to it and do whatever it is that you need to do to adjust it. I have all the adjustment taken out of it so that if I max it out, open all the way, I can easily swap the gun, flip it over to the other side if I'm going to, you know, do something support side. I can get in the gun, it can hang. I'll tighten it up and I have just the right amount of adjustment set in here so that when I tighten it through various positions, I use my sling. So I will use my sling in standing, kneeling, sitting, prone. I wrap into my sling. And this I learned when I was a sniper, like actually using that sling to help advance your position. You know, and I demo and I'll show guys that when I put this gun on and I have the sling around me and I'm holding the gun, like you're pulling the gun into your shoulder and you're having to pull and tighten the gun up to get it nice and tight. Well, then I just put my sling on, right? And I set the tightness and once I drop my elbow with the sling, you can't even move the gun. It is locked into my body and my position, and I'm not having to pull or fight or do anything with the gun. It's locked in there, and everything is super solid. The gun's not going anywhere. It helps control recoil, the whole nine. Yep. And I run it, you know, right back here. This is the other thing. So this is what works for me. Not saying it works for everybody. For me, I run it right off the end of the buffer tube where it connects in, and then I have a connection piece that's about halfway down the handguard where the front of mine goes. That's what works for me for how I run the gun and when I tighten it up, everything I need. I don't like to run it back here on my buttstock because if I do change positions of my buttstock, now you're changing your sling length. when you move this.
Mhm.
So to me, I don't like it. It doesn't work. I've seen guys run it on the other side, and that can help for different. I keep it all right here. It's always in one fixed position so that I can, again, adjust all my slack, and I have the adjusted tension that I need. I'm running an NGAL on this one. I bounce back and forth. One of my other rifles is set up with, with a Raid XE. I like this laser also. And I've got some others coming in that, that Envision, and then hopefully that new BE Myers, the new dagger. I run that. I run Surefire Light. Always run Surefire. Just tried, true, and tested. I mean, that's what we ran in combat. This one is on, one of their newer mounts. I put it on here, that does roll away to kind of show guys, especially those guys with the BE Myers, with those mauls that sit in here.
Comes in super handy with the maul. Yep.
Yes, because when they have to make that adjustment, which is underneath for a right-handed shooter, you got to either take your light off or on one of these mounts, you can just move it away. But most of the time, it just stays tucked right up in there. Running just the basic Surefire pad. Again, I just have it wrapped and secured in here so that when I grab the gun, I can easily manipulate it with my fingers here to turn my white light on and off. And then my thumb sits on the other side to hit, my NGAL pad. So the long part is whatever mode you have it in. And then the smaller button that's kind of protected back here is your Viz override. So it immediately jumps it into high Viz right there. And then I run a little stop. I've had this thing forever. I don't even know who makes it. No idea. I think it wasn't made anymore by whatever company did have them, because I remember trying to look them up and get some more. I think somebody else has come out with one. I just like something tiny and small just to throw a finger on and or use it to jam against something. If I'm barricade or something like that. I've run a grip for many, many years. One of my other guns has it. I know gangster grips aren't cool anymore, but dude, I ran one forever in combat. It works. Gave me a great place to put both my pressure pads, one little button for my finger and then the long pad for my light. It works. Again, I'm a big fan of do you. If it works for you, then fuck the internet and what everybody else says. Just run it, dude. If you're putting X's downrange, then nobody can say shit to you. And then this is Knights. This is their new can that I run on here. It's nice. It's quiet. Flash suppression is really good.
The mount on that can is super cool.
Yeah,
with the ball bearings that pop into place. Yep. That thing is.
Yeah, it is. It's nice, and it's probably. I'd say maybe it's been on there a little minute. I usually take them off every time I'm done, but this one's been on there for a little bit. But yeah, it is. It's a nice setup. I've been super happy with all my night stuff. I run a couple of these, and then I've got an SR25 that they built for me that's got a prototype barrel on it that's freaking tack driver. But yeah, man, that's my setup.
Sweet. Do you ever get into LPVOs, or have you ever messed around with LPVOs any?
I have. I shoot a lot of Vortex stuff. Just I'm set up with them as a dealer, and they've always taken care of me. I like their stuff. The warranty's awesome. But I've got a 1-10 on one of my other ARs, a 16-inch barrel. I don't mind them. I mean, here's my take on variable powers is my main mission for my entire time, in the unit was hostage rescue CQB. And for me, the EOTech was king. That is the fastest, the biggest eye box, the easiest to quickly come in, make your engagements. And you have a couple other little things in there. The little tick mark at the bottom is your 7-yard hold with a 50-yard zero. I've always liked it better than an aim point. And I've always run a 3x magnifier to give me that, little further distance to be able to see something. With variable powers, I've just never, again, I have it on a 16-inch AR. I've just never really had the need or wanted to have a gun that wasn't set up to quickly and easily be able to do CQB, or do room clearing or do close in, AR type work. The variable powers for me always were tricky, with the eye box trying to, they have dots in them and you name it. They try to make them zero magnification or, whatever. It's just never been the same. They're great for shooting some distance. They do work great. Night vision stuff sucks. Trying to look through those with a tube, with night vision and all that. It's horrible. So never been a fan. And every time somebody brings one through my class and we do some passive aiming, they're struggling.
Yeah.
But you know, they have a purpose. Nothing against them. I just, for me, for my mission, I just always set my ARs up for, you know, that CQB and being able to quickly come up and clear or do something with that.
I think that's what's missed a lot of the time with the OPVO stuff. Like people go, hey, it has a 1X. It's like, yes, it has a 1X. However, it has parallax.
Yep.
Unlike your EOTech, right? So like transitions are great examples. Like maybe it's a wide transition, maybe like not quite 180, but like a really wide transition. It's like coming off of one target, planting your vision on the next target. Because of the eye box, it's like you see blackness until the dot is directly in front of your face.
Yep.
And so I find my eyes going from like target focus to the dot, like almost bouncing back and forth. Which I do not like at all. I don't like that feeling of it at all. I've worked really hard to like be target focused, and then I put this thing on that makes my eyes want to bounce around. So
Yep.
I agree. I think they have their place. And that place is like, I don't know, maybe that intermediate type of range where a reticle comes in handy, like a mill reticle would come in handy.
Yep. I shoot. So on my SR25, I've got a Vortex Razor. It's like a 4 to 27 power or something like that. And I have the Tremor 3 reticle in it. Like I'm a big fan of the Tremors. The first H58, myself and Tom Spooner were on the same sniper team together, and we took it through SOTIC. We were like the first guys to take that reticle through SOTIC. They fucking hated us for it because they did not understand it. And dude, him and I used to get yelled at by our instructor all the time because we're calling shit in like 0.2 mils, you know, and he's like, that's not what we do. We call shit in quarters and halves, you know, but I'm like, that's what I see in my scope. That's what he sees in his. I'm like, right, 0.4, ting. I mean, they hated it because it's so accurate. It's so quick.
Yeah.
But I love it. I mean, you know, I don't do any long gun teaching, but a buddy of mine has a hunting ranch, Tall Tine Whitetail Ranch in Missouri, and I go out there and I'll entertain some of his clients sometimes, and I'll bring my SR25 out. We set out a range on his property out to like 500, 600, and I'll get guys shooting 12-inch steel out at 500 with that gun, and just by hold offs. And they love it. I'm just like, all right, you know, I'll walk them onto the target. All right, that target's at 300. Here's your hold. So, you know, once they understand that, I mean, I've had numerous guys that are then like, hey, I want this same gun. I want this gun. I want this reticle. You know, it's cool. It's fun. You don't have to dial shit. And even all your win calls are in there. Yeah, it's nice. I like it.
I like it too.
I have a 16-inch gun with the ATACR 4 to 16, and it does everything the Vortex 1 to 10 does better.
Yeah.
And then the 1 to 10 doesn't do what a red dot does better. So I have trouble finding a home for it. I mean, it's nice. It's good glass. It does, you know, it just feels like it fills a gap that doesn't really exist for me anyway.
Yeah. Yeah, you'll find one.
I agree.
You'll find one. Yeah. All this new ammo out there, and yeah, who knows?
All right, last question, and we will let you get back to your day. So, if you had one thing that you would pick that say you see the majority of people mess up, maybe there's one thing that people mess up in turn. Maybe it's how they set up their laser or not, or maybe it's how they train. Whatever the case may be, what is one thing that people should be looking at to change?
Man, good question. You know, I mean, on the night vision side of things, the biggest thing I see, we kind of we talked about it a little bit, but I didn't go really in depth, and you know, I can here, is that laser zero process. You know, we talked about the converging and the parallel, and do whatever works for you, right? Just understand it. The biggest issue is the actual shooting of it. So what I have seen, and there's a video out there where a guy does this, like he uses his glint tape, right? And here's what I buy. This is the easiest, simplest. You can go to Lowe's, Home Depot, go to the mailbox section, right? And they sell this. It's a couple bucks. It's a piece of reflective tape. I buy the silver. It's 2-inch by 24-inch. It's a couple bucks. And then I just take it and I take scissors, just open it up, and I'll just cut like I cut about, I try the best I can, like 3/4 inch squares, right? So I'll cut it here about 3/4 inch wide, and then I'll usually get like 3 of them out of it or something. So I end up with these, give or take, about 3/4 by 3/4 inch squares. And I've seen guys do this. I stumbled across a video on the internet where this guy goes down to his target, and he just uses like a blank piece of paper, which is fine. He draws a circle, and he puts the barrel of his rifle in there. I use a B8, all right, for a few reasons. And this is the funny part. I have really struggled with I'd love to make my own target, right? And I've thought about, hey, I'll make my own 0 target and do this, because I feel the way I teach it and what we do is pretty simple, right, way to do this. But I just can't do it. I can't bring myself to make money off of something that I show guys how to do this with just a B8, and it's the best way to build a 0 target ever, right? Is you just take a B8, you take your rifle, and you center it up. If you have a suppressor on, it's perfect. It nearly fills, right, the X-ring. So you center your gun up. Make sure your gun is straight up and down. Don't have any cant to it. That's another topic that we can talk about. But straight up and down on the thing, and then you turn on your laser and you make a mark on your piece of paper. So for me, I know, like with my laser, that my mark is going to be like right in here. All right, if you can see that. So when I set it up, my barrel right there. My mark for my end goal is generally right about there with my laser. So then what you do, and this was on the video, right? The guy then took his glint tape and he put it right where his mark was, and then he walked all the way back to 50, and then he put his bullet holes right in the X-ring, right? And he's like, good, now we're zeroed. And I'm like, nope. What you just did was you just shot your offset all the way out to 50. I said, now you were aiming high up here, but your bullets are now in the X-ring. I was like, you have never told those bullets to leave the gun and rise to get level with your optic, right? Because so
you're trying to hit the glint tape.
So you're trying with a parallel 0, you're trying to now put your rounds directly next to the glint tape. So here's what I do for simplicity's sake, because everybody wants to put their rounds here on a B8. They're like, no, I got to shoot the X-ring. Okay, take your piece of glint tape when you make your mark and come straight down and put it right next to the X-ring, directly under, right, your dot. So now when this is sitting, right, and I'll just stick this on there. That's the nice thing about this type of tape, is it has a sticky backing. So now you just take it, you peel it, right? So now I'm going to place this centered up where my dot was on my target. Okay, so now when I aim right there, okay, at 50, all the way back on the firing line, when I'm aiming there, my bullet is actually leaving the gun right here. Okay, because where is it on your day optic? Same exact thing. If I'm looking at point blank 0 and my dot in my EOTech is looking right at that X, and I pull the trigger, my bullet's going to hit down here because I have a height over bore. But what happens all the way when I get to 50? I've now told that bullet, hey, you depart the firing line, my CQB hold is down here, but you need to climb and get to the dot so that it's converging at 50, and then it rides over and comes back down. It's on again at 200. That's how the bullet rises and then falls back down. I'm doing the same thing with my 0, right? Is I mark it, but now I just pull the glint tape down because everybody wants to put their rounds in the X-ring. You could leave it there and then just make sure you're hitting up next to the glint tape, all right? But it's just easier. Just pull it down. Now, at the firing line or CQB distance, I would hit here. At 25, it's there. At 50, it's there. At 75, it's there. At 100, it's there. It starts coming back down. At 200, it's there again. That's how you get. That's the exact same thing you're doing with your day optic. Now I'm doing it with the laser. But guys will do that, and then they just put their rounds in here, and now you've just told that bullet, hey man, just stay flat, dumb, and happy. And then what happens? It's gonna go straight. You're always gonna have that offset, and then it's just gonna fall away.
We spent a lot of money on a class, and the 0 that you showed first is basically the only thing we walked away from the class with, and we're both like realizing how retarded that was.
Yeah,
I saw it on the internet.
We'll tell you who it was afterwards. But yeah, he had the glint tape exactly where your black dot was up there, and then you wanted to hit in the center of the X-ring, and we did that at 10 yards.
Yeah. You told that gun to do nothing. You told that bullet to just go straight out of the gun. Because then think about
$500 for that class.
Yeah,
I think it was. Yeah.
It's that you're not zeroed. It'd be the same thing as if you took your day optic and made a mark on the paper to see, okay, what's my height over bore, and then you walk back to whatever range, and you still aimed here, but you put your bullets whatever that distance was below.
Great.
Yeah, you don't have a 50-yard zero. Like you don't have any zero. You
have
never
a 50-yard offset. Good job.
Yeah, exactly.
That's super.
Yeah. And then and the only difference with this, so that's a parallel. And again, I just like the parallel because your impacts are all in the black all the way from CQB distance to 250 yards with your typical AR. If you do a converging, now just put that piece of glint tape. You don't have to measure anything. Just put the piece of glint tape on the X and then just shoot it out. Okay. Start at 50. It's going to be the easiest to get a good bloom and ensure that you're on the glint tape, and then, push it out to 100. That would be my recommendation, just to, again, this is the offset. So with a converging, I've basically told that bullet, hey, when you leave the gun here, you're now climbing just like we would here, but now you're starting to go to the right. Right, as I'm looking at it, it's going to the right or it's going to the side that intersect here. So then what's happening after that? It's still climbing, but now it's going further off to the right. So if at CQB distance I'm here by 100 yards, now my impact is way up here. So that's what's happening with a divergence, converging, diverging. Now gravity's taking over. It's still starting to rise a little bit. And then as gravity takes over, it's still going off to the side, but now it's starting to fall away. So now you go from, instead of having this zero all here in the black, to now this is what happens. It's just off paper.
Yeah. Yeah, you remember a while ago when I was like, man, I really hate zeroing these things. I've just now figured out why.
Well, we all say this, right? You don't know what you don't know, right? So unless you get taught the right way to do something, or you come to the right class, do we understand? Oh shit, yeah, that makes sense.
I mean, yeah, intuitively that makes sense, but again, we paid $500 to learn this shit, so I thought we knew what we were talking about.
Yeah, me too.
Hey, I'll charge you guys way less. That right there was free. See,
it's awesome.
Yep. But yeah, that's a big thing that I see is guys come to the class, and even my last class I just taught, I had some guys that, as I was explaining this, they even set their target up and left their glint tape up there. And I went, okay, you guys know. They're like, yeah, this is the way we've done it before. And I went, okay. And I let them shoot their first group, and then we walked down there and they were, in the X ring, because they, everybody makes sure they're zero before they get there. And I'm like, okay, what are you going to do now? And he's like, oh, I'm good. I was like, no, you're not. And I just re-explained it, and they went, oh shit. Yeah. I'm like, yeah, you have no elevation right now out of that bullet. You're not zeroed. You just haven't. Yeah.
They took a class from the same guy we did.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Yeah.
Dude, this was really, really good. I think this will be good for people to get to listen to, and I think they'll get a ton out of it, man. I really appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, man. No, I appreciate you having me. I'd love to share this information. I mean, that's why I teach. Like, I don't do it for the money. I honestly turn business away. I could be teaching this stuff every freaking week. And I mean, not that I don't want to, but I got other shit I'm doing in life. And, but I enjoy it. I do enjoy sharing this information. So, you get any more questions, I'm happy to get on another podcast down the road. Hopefully this will do well. And, guys will really want to hear more, and man, I'm happy to share more information with you.
Yeah, man. No, we'd love to have you back on. If people are looking to find you, do you do like civilian classes, or do you just do law enforcement, military? Like, where can people find you, and who do you typically teach?
So, website, 1 Minute Out. This is the number one, 1minuteout.com is my website. My classes are usually up on there. I mostly train law enforcement and government. I catch so much flack from civilians because they want the training, and I get it. Here's my take on it. I'm busy with law enforcement and government. Like, I mean, when we hang up, I've got 4 or 5 emails I got to get back with guys about courses coming up. Not that I won't do civilians. I have nothing against it. Some people think that, they think I'm making more money with law enforcement. It's not. This isn't about the money, right? That's not why I do it. I do it because those guys need the training. They're the ones out there that are protecting all of us now, right? So I want to give them the training. The civilian stuff, I've taught them before. I've taught civilian classes. I generally just don't because I'm just so busy. Not to say I won't if guys want a course. You've got to get guys together. You got to find the range. You got to find the location. I don't have a location that, hey man, come to my house and come train. Not happening. You find a range, you find a location, get at least 10 to 12 of your buddies together. And we could see about putting something together. So they can message me on my website. For any of the law enforcement and government guys, my courses are up on the website. There's only usually a few a year that I have that are open enrollment for law enforcement and government, because most of the time I'm direct training with a department. It's a closed course. But right now I know I have one that I still have slots for. It's an open enrollment class for law enforcement or government in Palm Bay in February. That one's up on the website. There'll be one getting posted soon for California, right around Riverside area,
Cool.
Temecula. That I've got an open enrollment course. I was out there last year just training those guys. And now they're like, hey man, come back out and just run an open course, because I've got other requests from departments in the area. And working on some other open ones for 25. Definitely one in, I think, like New Jersey area or something like that for probably the fall. But yeah, guys can find me on there. You can email me via the website if you got questions on stuff, and or want to try to set up some training or a course, then hit me up on there.
Sweet, man.
Yeah.
Jamey,
Yep.
Thanks for coming on, man.
Oh, heck yeah. Thank you guys. I really appreciate it. And yeah, man, I look forward to hopefully doing another one.
Awesome.